This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'm going to be continuing my beginner chess opening series on the Slav Defense. This is part 3 about the exchange variation. So I'm going to kick things off here with a game from the 1988 World Cup with Yasser Seirawan playing white and Alexander Belyavsky playing black. So with c6, we got the Slav Defense here, and now the exchange variation, rapidly releasing the tension in the center, but this also does kind of open up some problems for black. Maybe white is going to get some pressure somehow on the b5 square. So bishop f4, and this is kind of the standard way of continuing for white. Now knight c6, definitely a flexible move, and now bishop f5. You can also play a6. We're going to see some options with an early a6 in the next game. So bishop f5 and e6. There's other lines where you can, for example, play e6 here, but I just don't like them as much. And I think black also an early bishop g4 is possible. But I just think bishop f5 is kind of the most principled way, and also really goes in line with the other parts of the series and the system I've been developing here. So with e6 and bishop b5, and so knight d7. So this is very important to play the early knight d7 because white is already trying to start some stuff on the queen side here with this pin. And is maybe thinking about knight to e5 as well, rook c1, queen f4. It's a very easy plan. So knight d7 kind of diffuses the tension there and just kind of wards off any potential threats. So Belyavsky continues, bishop to e7. So very kind of a standard moves here, nothing crazy. And I didn't really like that Seirawan took so early because if you think about it, the knight on c6 really is probably not going to go anywhere, anytime soon. I mean, at least for this move, there's no way. I mean, the knight, probably rook c1, I think, was a better choice, more flexible and whatnot, because, rook c1, I mean, the knight moves, you can just play knight e5. So there's absolutely no reason to take the knight so early. I think it's just a little bit too committal. So pawn takes, and you can see what, Seirawan's plan is definitely to kind of create a bind on these dark squares on the queen side. So rook c8, and this is a nice flexible move. I mean, you're going to have to play this move anyway. And in light of Belyavsky's next move, you could play g5 right away. But I think it just makes so much more sense to play something like rook c8. Don't play your cards too early. Even if you're thinking about playing this kind of crazy idea, there's no reason to do it right away. Rook c8, finish your development, kind of shore up the position, no weaknesses, and so now it's time to move forward. So g5, this is a really cool way to go after the exchange variation as black because you really put the pressure on white. It's very surprising, and I think you'll just win games, in 15, 20 moves playing this type of aggressive chess. And for me, normally when you see this type of position in the French defense, there are some similar concepts. Not too many openings where you get the chance to really just, put it all out there like this. But the g5 move, I feel like in this exchange variation of the Slav is actually not that risky. I think the bishop is always going to be almost always for white on f4. So this plan, and the knight going to d7 is a very natural move in this line. So just setting it up for g5, it's like white, really shouldn't have any idea. I mean, you're not doing anything out of the ordinary. So the rook c8, that's why that was such a nice idea. Just go ahead and protect your stuff on the queen side. No problems. And now you can proceed, with a very dangerous attack. So here, Belyavsky, g4, just tear open the king side, open the h file, very important. And now we can see the type of forcing chess that he's playing. Every single move, just a new attack. And bishop d6, by the way, here, it just doesn't make any sense. Because, I mean, on the one hand, maybe you could try to swing the rook over, but the bishop, you want to have this bishop to control some dark squares in case the attack doesn't work out, and especially c5. Okay, so king f7 and rook h5. I mean, it's not brain surgery, it's not rocket science for black here. Open h file, just go for the attack. So bishop e4, just kind of lining some things up. And just bishop to f3. 21, bishop f3. And here Seirawan resigned because there's no way to escape impending mate on the h file. And he's just cut off all the escape squares. So a very interesting way to really, just take down the exchange variation as black in the Slav defense. So moving forward, this is a game from the Corsica Masters tournament in 2006 between Alexander Chernin, playing white, against Etienne Bacrot, playing black. So opening up, and Chernin just plays directly the exchange variation. He's not messing around. Maybe he didn't want to mess with any Queen's Gambit accepted by Bacrot. And so very straightforward stuff. Here, Bacrot plays an extremely flexible move, A6. And this really just falls in with any number of lines for black. I mean, the early E6 before playing bishop to F5, for example. A6 can be played with virtually, even G6. And the move A6 makes sense because it protects the B5 square here. So anyway, so knight C6, still very flexible. The knight's going to C6 almost in every line. And so finally bishop F5. So I like how Bacrot, I do appreciate how he plays this opening, because very flexible and not misleading, but it's not playing your cards too early, and it leaves white kind of guessing on what line you're going to play. So now E3, rook C8, and by some weird move order, it's arrived at a completely symmetrical position except for the pawn being on A3 and castling. So it's very close to symmetrical. Knight D2. And so now A3 and knight D7. So it is completely symmetrical now. And, this is just kind of one of the things about playing the Slav defense. If white wants to go into the exchange variation and play for a draw, it's tough to stop him. Although we did see in the previous game the idea with G5 and H5, if you feel a little more attacking and not scared to go for it. So knight B3. So white calmly just transfer the knight. Probably trying to play knight A4, pick up on these dark square weaknesses on the queen side. And so bishop F6. So Bacrot finally stops, no more similar positions. And bishop F6, very standard stuff, trying to prepare to play E5 and really bust open the center. But first, black, and very important in the Slav defense to remember this principle, finish your development before making committal opening moves. These thematic breaks with E5, for example. Anything. You want to finish your development and just make sure there's not going to be a problem with anything. So here, Chernin, rook E1, and it's kind of like both players, with H6 here, black, H6 is a useful move. He doesn't want to play a move like B5, for example. This is very important, positional note. Can't take pawn moves back, right? So this is going to forever weaken the C5 square, playing B5. And also, it kind of creates a target. Maybe not immediately. A4 is not, especially effective because of B4. But even still, maybe this is not even that cool. You got the pawn here. Let's say not even knight A2, maybe knight B1, trying to reroute the knight towards the center. And you can see, the bishop, this opens it up for white. Definitely advantageous for white if black plays B5 like that. So instead, Bacrot here, just kind of a waiting game. Just patiently improve your position, as much as you can. Bringing the bishop back, nothing too crazy. And he was really waiting for knight A4 because it seemed like that was what white was planning. Knight F3 to D2 to B3. Seems like he's going to bring the knight to A4 and try to hit the C5 square. So as soon as that happens, Bacrot is perfectly placed. He has no loose pieces. Even the bishop on G6, not even loose anymore. And he's ready to just bust it open in the center. So with E5, he's obviously poised for that. And so now a couple of exchanges and rook E7. So a nice lateral defense move here. Knight takes. And so B4. So black, you can't be scared of having this isolated D pawn because black's position becomes so much more dynamic and active once you play that E5 push. So even though temporarily you've got the maybe the long-term weakness on D5, but usually you're going to either be able to liquidate that on D4 or your activity just compensates for it. So now knight C4. So here Bacrot just trying to take advantage of his activity, and with the active knight and bishop B2 threat, and now the bishops just control the board. And so here he takes, and I guess rook takes. maybe just not so good. I mean, possibly takes and b6, and it seems like white is going to be losing a piece. And among the other complications, I mean, queen takes, and now rook takes. Maybe black just has enough activity and stuff in response to sacking a pawn here. I think black is doing okay. So instead, white tried bishop d6, and so bishop d6, rook e8, no problem. And white chose to take this pawn because now he's trying to round up the c4 pawn as well. So queen b6, c3, and all of a sudden, with the help of these bishops, just controlling quite a big chunk of the board here, black is able to just march that pawn down, and bishop b2 sacks the exchange here. And so now rook d8 pretty much just finished the game. Queen b5, and here white resigned. He has no defense against queen to a4 and rook d1. Even the opposite colored bishops, it just doesn't matter. Queen b5 really just seals the deal. The game's over. I mean, let's say queen here, rook d1. There's just no way to stop it. Also, the same thing with queen e1, rook d1, just the same. So this concludes part 3 and the final part of my Slav Defense beginner chess opening series. And in part 1, kind of covered the main ideas with the knight c3 or really knight f3 and early e3. And in part 2, covered just kind of different main lines. And so part 3 here covered the exchange variation. And I really liked in game 1 how Beliowski was able to play that g5, h5, that psycho combination. I definitely recommend it. Try it out and really try to push to win as black there. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.